You're listening to Conferences Online Allergy from Children's Mercy Hospital in Kansas City, Missouri. Today is September 5th, 2025. Our topic is Jobs, Contracts, and Financial Literacy for the Physician, Part 2. This is presented by Dr. Maggie Barnthouse, an Assistant Professor of Pediatrics at Children's Mercy Hospital in UMKC in Kansas City, Missouri.
I'm Maggie Barnthouse. Nice to meet y'all, who I work with all the time. And this is my disclaimer. I am not a financial advisor. I am just a giant dork who really likes this stuff. And so this is not something that you should take as legal advice. I don't think you would anyways, but just so you know. And oops, wait, went too fast. These are the things that we are going to cover today. We're going to spend most of our time in steps 1 through 3. And then I have a whole bunch of information at the end on stuff if we don't get to it. But hopefully you guys all came with like a general idea in your mind of where you are financially. I can make a lot of guesses just based on where you are in training, but everyone is ever so slightly different. And so where you are starting, credit card debt, this is pretty easy to accumulate when you're in training, and we make you do interviews, although you guys don't have to travel as much, but it's just easy because you make, $14 a year, and then we have to pay a lot more than that to live. Educational debt, not everyone has it. Lots of people do coming out of med school, so I'm going to assume that the majority does. Car loans, maybe you needed a new car, maybe you bought a house, maybe you already have disability insurance. I'd be real impressed. Maybe you don't. Life insurance, umbrella insurance, retirement savings. I don't know where you all are starting, but I know where I started. And then these are some different scenarios. You have to imagine that you're old for these. Also, when I was giving Nick this lecture last night to practice, he told me no one gets my references because they're too old. So Danny Tanner was the dad in Full House. He was a single dad. He had 3 kids. So he didn't start saving until he was 40 because he was trying to live life and he had these 3 girls. He saved $50,000 a year once he was 40, sorry. So that's awesome, right? That's a huge chunk of savings. Assuming 7% growth, how much is he going to have when he is 60 and wants to retire? $2 million. Woohoo! Okay, that's really not enough to retire if you want to have a pretty darn good life, because that's $60,000 income a year. Is that possible? Yes. Is he going to get to travel and have a lot of fun in that retirement? Maybe, maybe not. If his house is paid off, that may be enough. If he needs full-time care, maybe not. I don't know. So the more fun, and you see, you guys, it'd be a lot more fun if you knew who Jessie Spano was. But Jessie Spano was the dorky girl on Saved by the Bell, New York Stock Exchange Bell. So she finished her fellowship and had already started a Roth IRA because she listened to this lecture. And she saved 20% of her gross income for 20 years. So now, and she married Slater, obviously her boyfriend on the show. He shockingly saved well as well, because you wouldn't think he'd do that. But they saved $100,000 a year out of their dual income. So at age 50, 20 years later, they have hit the 4 million mark, and they are now working only because they want to, not because they have to any longer. So I'm neither of those scenarios, but just again, disclaimer, not a financial professional, not a lawyer. I don't have any debt any longer beyond a mortgage. We're leaving that out. And I'm only telling you this stuff so that you have an idea of where I am, and you can juxtapose this with where you are and where you want to be, and just to be more realistic, because if you go down the rabbit hole of the investment stuff on the internet, then some of those people are cray-cray. So I drove my car from college. I was really lucky my parents gave me that car until this year. And then I did pay cash for a new car. I have a firm belief in paying, not when you're a fellow, not when you're a resident if you need a car, but once you're an attending, pay cash for a car so that you're not taking on additional debt on a depreciating asset. But I did get a new car because mine New, by the way, it was 2 years old and had a dent. But my old car kept overheating and when it would get stuck in first gear. So you also have to make like the safe decision. You can't roll around in your 2008 car that is stuck in first gear because you need to protect your greatest asset, which is your ability to earn income. Then we're going to go through the waterfall of what you're doing. So emergency fund plus short-term savings, you get to decide what this is. I do have that now. Private owned occupation disability insurance. I use our hospital plan. So this is kind of specialty dependent and it's income dependent. So I use our hospital plan. I do not have my own outside plan. Nick does as a proceduralist. And then max out all retirement accounts available. I backdoor my Roth, my IRA to Roth. I do not do the 457. Neither of us do. Neither are governmental. Could we do these? Probably. If you don't know what this is, you're going to learn. But we don't because they are not governmental at either one of our institutions. That means that they are not portable. They're exposed to creditors should the hospital ever go under. Is Children's Mercy going to go under? Probably not. So it's definitely something I could do, but we have chosen not to. 529. We do have 529s for our kids. That's a little bit controversial. I am not planning to fully fund their med school through Ivy League private the entire time. They're going to hopefully go to in-state public school because I'm brainwashing them to be KU fans very, very hard. So that is my goal, is to fund that. I don't know what the future looks like. They're a little, but should they choose to go somewhere else, then that'll be a discussion. Kansas does give you a tax credit. So if any of you guys stay in Kansas, I know that law pretty well. You get a tax credit for any plan. Does not have to be the Kansas plan. It's up to $6,000 per kid or per beneficiary. So technically you could split that up into even more. I primarily invest in index funds. I do have some individual stocks from like the beginning in the olden days when I thought that would be fun. But, and I've just held on to them for tax reasons. I have a very detailed financial plan. My spouse is mostly on board, not always. And we do travel a lot. That is what we spend almost all of our free money on. And, you know, again, you go down the financial rabbit hole and their goal is to literally like be done working at 40, and they eat ramen and they wear their tennis shoes until they have holes and drive a Toyota Camry until the wheels fall off. I'm not quite that extreme. So you get to decide where you are on that extreme pathway. So salary of $200,000, not randomly chosen, but 20% of gross income goes towards retirement, is about $40,000 a year. Times 30 years equals $1.2 million. That's not enough. But you invest that times 30 years and it grows that whole time and you're going to hit $4 million. So interest is in your favor with a long time horizon. Then, so again, this is 30 years on average. We're going to say that you're finishing fellowship around 30 to make the math easier. I think I was like 29, but we're going to ignore that just to make the math easier. You have a long horizon. This is not something to start when you're 40 thinking about. It is something to start thinking about today because time is your friend right now. Then the power of compound interest. Say you hit that, $4 million and you let it grow for an additional 10 years, but you're not contributing as much because, I don't know, fill in the blank with any of a million reasons, but it'll still continue to grow without you putting in 1 cent more to $8 million over the decade. This calculation, I used 7% so that it would truly double. That is a pretty aggressive market historical return. The rule of thumb is 4 to 7%. So I used 7% to make my graphs look pretty. But in my own calculations, I err more on the 4 to 5%. I was invested pre-2008, so saw everything that I had, which I was in med school, so that was like $4, but watched it go from $4 to $1 pretty quickly. And so I'm a little more conservative on that. A lot of the financial people that you'll see right now are my age, but may have started a little later, and so have not gone through. We've just had historical, really, really good times for the last 2 decades. So everything's just grown and grown and grown since 2008. And anyways, be conservative with your calculations so that you don't get burned. So how do we decide a retirement goal? Everyone wants to retire, right? It's easy to think about, like, I really want to ski a lot during my retirement, but how much do you need to retire? How much income do you need in retirement? You can start thinking through this with your expenses. Honestly, your expenses are probably going to change a whole lot in the next few years. So you pick a random goal for now and adjust that as you go. But say your goal is to have 100 grand a year, then you can calculate the number that you need by taking that 100,000, dividing it by 3%, which gives you the withdrawal rate. That's based on 30 years. So if you happen to be Greek like Nick, and you have grandparents that have lived to be like 104, then you may want to be even a little more conservative with this, because there's a solid chance he's going to be like kicking around for decades longer than my calculations. So how do you do this math? You use online calculators. Then you figure out how to use the formula and you stick it in Excel. And that's the 4.7 or 4 to 7% historical market returns. You can put it in Excel. You can take your total portfolio plus your planned contributions over the next 30 years. Mine's looking more like 20 years now. I just did that math. Plus returns, and it'll give you an expected amount in year 20, whatever. So you've gone through med school residency. It made you a clinical expert, but I don't know about yours. I had no business training whatsoever. I had a business minor in undergrad, and that's it. I had no personal financial or investment training in residency. Some probably have some nowadays, but it's going to be pretty minimal compared to our medical training. Soon you're going to be attending level employed, which means you are the family CFO, you are the pension fund manager, you're going to be paying a lot of taxes. So fun. So you need some education on this. And the internet always calls this your second job. Are you going to spend as much time with it? Hopefully not. But you do have to spend some time learning about finances if you're going to be a responsible financial person. Nobody cares about your money as much as you do. So any financial advisor that you have is not going to care as much as you do. Just by definition of humans are selfish creatures. So you have to learn the rules. You have to learn what these things are, learn what these words mean. You can hire a professional, and the majority of people probably should. Your goal is what to look for in that professional. So you want someone who is going to teach you what to do, not someone who is just going to invest it and take their 1% forever, because that 1% doesn't sound like much. And then you add it up over decades and at the hopeful portfolio that most physicians will have, and they will make thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars off of a portfolio that could have plopped down in a Vanguard index fund and performed very, very similarly. So we have broken up with our financial advisor. It's like a real breakup too. But your goal is to find someone who can help you learn, and or someone who is fee only who will do it for you. Not everyone needs to do it themselves. Like, I have zero interest in learning how to do house stuff myself. If you have zero interest in learning how to do finance stuff yourself, that's totally cool. But you want a fee-only person, not someone who's going to take a percentage. You have to spend the time, even if you hired someone, you have to spend the time looking at it to make sure you're not getting hosed, or to make sure that nothing is falling through the cracks. Again, nobody cares about your money near as much as you do. This is checking your paychecks, checking your reimbursements, making sure everything is as it should be. So, how do you get that financial education? Dave Ramsey, he is not cool. Like, none of the physicians are big fans, but if you have credit card debt, budgeting problems, spending problems, I'm a big fan because he is who is going to teach you those type wants, needs things. Simple Path to Wealth is a great book. Bogleheads is kind of Bogleheads. I actually don't know how to say that out loud. He's like the Vanguard founder. He is one of the icons of the finance industry. And he was the first to say, kind of, you can do this yourself. It's not very hard. And the White Coat Investor is a physician-specific investment thing. They get fairly extreme, and like nobody should eat out ever until you are fully retired at the age of 42. But they're very useful information, especially if you want to do something specific, like do a backdoor Roth IRA once you're in attending. Very, very good guides on how to do it. All of these things have podcasts too. You gotta know how to get those things off the internet. I haven't figured that out yet, so I read old books. And then one of your very initial financial education things is to put a written financial plan in place. Mine is not truly written. Mine's on my computer, but it needs to be written down somewhere. It can't just be in your head. So then how do you keep up with it? Because everything changes. So the rules for the retirement accounts are different now than when I finished fellowship. And it was my second year of fellowship that I started to learn anything about this. And it's different now. So you have to keep up. And find some financial blog that you can at least tolerate or like, or a podcast, and then follow each month. I don't know, check in every so often. I'm a dork. I check in all the time, but you do not need to do that. Or when major financial changes are happening. Elections make crazy things happen. Market changes. You're not allowed to panic sell anyway, so you don't really need to look into that. But, sometimes stocks are on sale and you want to know so that you can buy them, or tax loss harvest, things like that. Interest rate changes. Yeah, that's big news right now. Maybe they're going to change a lot in the near future. Maybe not. Or big personal changes. Maybe you have a Daddy Warbucks uncle who dies and leaves you a whole bunch. It's good to look into what to do with that. And we can all hope, right? Or you sell your house and you want to 1031 it. You need to know about those things for big life events. That's when you're going to be looking more into this. So, what hoses doctors most frequently is going to be trying to live that doctor lifestyle. So you're not living within your means. And not all doctors are created equally. So the peds academic physician is not going to make as much as the private practice IR dude who lives down the street. And that's okay. You have to live within your own means. Attendings really should not have credit card debt except in really extreme circumstances, which totally happen. But then inadequate savings, there are attendings living paycheck to paycheck. Being house poor, it's a big one. And disability, not being prepared for those bad things that happen. Divorce is a very frequent and big financial pitfall. I don't know what the correct word is. Big financial setback. And so invest in your marriage, invest in who your partner is going to be, and consider a prenup if you're not already married. But education with your partner, you need to be on the same page about short and long-term goals. So maybe your partner's long-term goal is to retire at 40, or maybe your long-term goal is to retire at 40. You're going to really have to adjust your lifestyle between 30 and 40 to get there. But maybe your partner's goal is to retire at 60 when he's still young enough to travel, but in the interim, he wants to have a better lifestyle. Okay, great. That's totally attainable. But you need to know what those long-term goals are and what the short-term goals are. So this is open conversations. We have annual family planning meetings. They're really fun for me. And that is where we discuss big upcoming expenditures and then maintenance conversations of like, hey, you're being super expensive lately. Let's talk about what happened, what changed, what are we doing here? So everyone's overwhelmed, right? All this conversation about all these things that we don't know about. What do we do about it? This is what I was alluding to earlier. You can do it yourself. You can hire a professional. In a professional, you want a fee-based investor, not percentage-based. The 1% will literally turn into hundreds of thousands of dollars siphoned off the top. We are talking about 4 to 7% historical market returns. So that 1% is a big chunk of that. It's 25%, or I can't do the 1/7 quite as easily. I think like 16%. They tend to prefer higher fee investments, moving around a lot. Not all of them are fiduciaries, so they're going to try to sell you insurance, frequent reallocations. This costs money, and anytime you're moving positions, you're losing out on potential growth. So you pay them the percentage, you pay them with each change. They obviously have an incentive to do well for you, but they also have an incentive to just change a lot and tinker. Do it yourself is easier than I thought it was going to be. There's no such thing as timing the market well and consistently. So my very first time buying stocks was in 2008, September 2008, big market crash. Great. So I had awesome timing because I bought in just a couple months before that. I didn't do anything for the sheer reason that it really wasn't online then, and I didn't know how to do anything, and I didn't look. And it has rebounded, obviously, quickly after that. But there's good studies to show that if you just sit in index funds, they will outperform active market timing most of the time. Most of the time, not all the time. So there are always going to be the people who know how to short and day trade and do all of the super exciting things. That is usually not physicians. We are more passive investors. And the reason is because we are seeing patients and doing our primary day job, which is not financial education. And it's not trying to know which company is doing X, Y, or Z so that we can short and day trade and all the other stuff. So that is what is going to be most beneficial for most physicians is passive investing, letting it sit and ride. So the hard stuff for this, you're still going to have to do anyways, even if you do have a professional. That is what takes introspection. It takes a lot of time. You make your budget, you stick to it, you determine your asset allocation, and being on the same page with your partner. Those are the hard things. The easy stuff, if you're doing it yourself, is the spreadsheet to track your portfolio, investing, rebalancing, to maintain your asset allocation, following your credit reports. I mean, we should all be doing that as humans. Those things don't take very long. And ideally, if you're investing passive, you're doing them like once a year or a couple of times a year. If you're going to tax loss harvest or something, then you may do it a few times a year. We're going to learn about what that is, by the way. So, debt management elimination. I'm going to guess that most of us at this point in life have debt. And what you're going to do is budget. And it's not a fly by the seat of your pants phenomenon. So you have to go into this with eyes wide open and make a plan. It is the easiest concept, live within your means, right? I mean, we all kind of learned that like in grade school. It's the hardest to practically apply. And you have to separate your wants from your needs. Again, we all learned this. My daughter is learning it in her 3rd grade Peanutville community project right now this week. So she can say the pet shelter is a want, not a need. The police force is a need, but applying that to your life gets a lot harder. We work hard, and again, our brains and our ability to work is our greatest asset. So you should not be depriving yourself completely. You need mental health, wellness, enjoyment. You can have fun things. I absolutely am a big supporter of having fun things, minus travel. You just can't have all the fun things. So you can't take the Disney cruise with your kids and have the giant Dr. House and buy yourself a Porsche 911. It's just not tenable to have all those things. If you have an income where you can do all those things, that's phenomenal. And that's awesome. It's just not realistic for the majority of physicians. So you go through this backwards. And instead of taking, these are all of my expenses and adding them up and seeing where it falls in your income, you do the reverse. You start with your salary, then you figure out what I need to save each year to retire. All right, take that off the top. Well, first you have to take off taxes. Then you take off what you need to save each month to retire or to do X, Y, or Z. You take that first from your salary. Then you plan with the remainder what is left. Now, what you're taking off the top, that may be paying back your student loans, that may be paying down your car loan, that may be paying down your house. Then the rest of the expenses need to fit in what is left. So you're really backwards of how we would naturally do. You got to plan like my great grandma Murphy, who lived in Solomon, Kansas during the Great Depression and was a big fan of utility first and foremost. So this is really where the needs come in first. You need a safe car. You don't need a fancy car. You need to live somewhere. You don't need to live in Patrick Mahomes' house in Loch Lloyd. Be really cool though. Then everyone needs an emergency fund. No physician should be living paycheck to paycheck, and this includes fellows. So this is where you have a little bit of leeway though. So 3 to 6 months for savings for emergencies. These are necessities. These are like, what do I need to keep the power on and have a roof over my kids' heads? If I get fired today, I'm canceling Netflix. So my emergency fund is trimmer than some. And as a fellow, it was not 6 months of savings for emergencies. We do have pretty good job security as physicians in general. So you do not need to overfund this, but you also don't want to be living paycheck to paycheck. Your total savings will include short-term plan savings, and that is like, what do I have big coming up that I need to be saving for? So that is moving costs. Maybe you're a second year and you're going to be working elsewhere and you're going to have to move cross country. Ideally, your attending job is going to chip into this, but it is not, they may not cover all of it. Then maybe you want a down payment on something or other, like a house or, I don't know, a car. Maybe, I listed that separately. Maybe you want a car. Maybe you have a vacation that your eye is on. This is where you would be saving for that. Where do you save for that? My old Bank of America savings account earns 0.29% interest. That is total peanuts. So open a high yield savings account because this is money that's going to sit. This is not your monthly, what you're paying your bills out of checking account. This is the money that's going to sit. So you want a high yield savings account, cash plus account if you're at Vanguard, brokerage in a money market mutual fund. All are going to earn over 1%. Most will be towards the 4%-ish range right now. Now that'll change based on the environment at the time. But this is money that you're sitting on for emergencies or for planned big expenditures. And everyone needs a little bit of this. This is your rainy day fund. Do fellows need 6 months of expenses saved up? Probably not. So use your discretion for this. Then once you have enough saved that you're not living paycheck to paycheck, and if your car breaks down, you have something, then you get to start investing. And this is where your asset allocation comes in. So what is your asset allocation? It is your split of bonds, equities, domestic, international, all those small cap, large cap, all those fun things that go into investments. And this is every investment. This is your retirement accounts. This is your taxable brokerage. This is your kids' 529. Every single investment that is invested in anything other than cash is going to be made up of some asset. What that is different for every single person. And me at knocking on 40 and another 40-year-old are not going to have the same asset allocation depending on our life experiences and personally how risk averse are you. Whatever you need to sleep at night. So maybe I have actually gotten less risk averse than when I very first started, but I'm still going to be more risk averse as I get older in general. So it's like a bell curve for me. That's not necessarily how it's going to look. You're going to go into this with a lot more education. So you should get less risk averse as you get older and the money becomes more something that you're going to need in the near future. So if you're 59, it is not the time to mess around with a bunch of small cap international stocks. So the general rule of thumb is your age minus 10 should be your bond percentage. And again, I'm not there yet because physicians start pretty late in this game, but that's the general internet rule of thumb. You get to decide individually your percentage of bonds, your percentage of stocks. They make some magical things in our retirement funds at Children's Mercy that are called target date funds. They decide all of this for you. You pay a little bit of not a management fee as much, but an expense ratio for the managed funds that are target date. They tend to be very, very conservative. So say you leave this lecture today and you're like, you know what? I'm going to check on we have a 403B here, I think. I'm going to check on my 403B or maybe I'm going to create one. And I'm going to invest in it, but I don't have any of those other things figured out yet, but my paycheck's coming next week or whenever. Then you can pick a target date fund. Choose as far out as you'd want to retire or a little further because they tend to be fairly conservative. So mine, I think, is set to like 2060. I have no intention of working that I would be old. So I'm not going to be working until I'm 80. But it's set further out. Then you get to choose within each asset allocation, what am I going to invest in? I hope that you take from this that we are going to be lazy about our investing and we are going to invest in something that is easy. There is actually something called the lazy portfolio. It's great. Google it. And there's a 3-fund portfolio. My goal is to impress upon you the merit of index funds. These are the boring stock draft horse that pulls the plow. They are made up of very small amounts of tons and tons of companies. So in your index fund, you probably own some Amazon, but that's a whole lot safer than owning Amazon outright, which, has fluctuations. So you choose an index fund. There are good studies that show over time the index funds beat individual management. Index funds are the big name things like VTI, VTSAX, and those are the Vanguard specific ones, and VOO, SPY, any of those type big name index funds are going to be hopefully the majority of your portfolio. And that is because they're as safe as stocks can be. But they are well balanced, made up over lots and lots of little companies, and you can choose one that works for you. A lot of that decision might be where you're investing. If it is in your company sponsored retirement account, they are going to be doing most of that choosing for you. You may not have unlimited options. This is a long-term plan. You are not buying stocks that you are planning to change tomorrow. Your goal is to only contribute, and you're not even looking at it except when you're rebalancing a few times a year or tax loss harvesting. So your goal is to not mess with this. You're set it and forget it and let it grow. So actually, you know what? We're going to talk about tax loss harvesting right now because I don't think I have it on any other stuff. It is selling when stocks are down to take a loss going forward. Very popular in a lot of the physician finance stuff. It is not something to do right away because you're just messing, and it's not something to do when it drops a little. It's something to do when it drops a lot, and then you have a loss carry forward on your taxes. I would not mess with that one bit when you're a fellow because you're in a different tax bracket. Once you get to that point, then you can just email me and we'll go through it again. So your first step, your very first investment should be in your work sponsored account up to the match. So you, as fellows, at least back in the day, were eligible for the retirement accounts and got a match. That is free money that Children's is willing to give to you. I think it's up to 3% where they will match. So this should be a no-brainer. Everyone is investing up to that cap, up to that match for sure. Now, there is a cap that's $23,500 in 2025 into each of these accounts. And two of those are mutually exclusive, and then the 457 I don't think you're eligible for in fellowship. So your 401k or 403b, that is your very first priority up to the match. If you can max that out as a fellow, awesome. If you can't, totally fine. But you should hit that 3% as a goal. And you get to choose. We have both available to us. Do you want to invest it traditional? Do you want to invest it Roth? As a fellow, my goal for you would be to choose to do it Roth. The downside to that is that it is post-tax money, so you are going to see more come out of your paycheck. The upside to that is you're in a lower income tax bracket now than you hopefully ever will be again. I say hopeful because, life, but hopefully you're in the lowest tax bracket you will be in right now. We have the option to do both at Children's. We actually have the option to contribute to both simultaneously and have a blend. As a fellow, again, my goal for you is going to choose the Roth account when and if possible. Then, even more specific about some of our children's offerings, our 457 is non-governmental. That means that if Children's were to ever go under, it will be exposed to creditors. It's not protected like a government one is and like your 401k is. The other downside is if you go to an institution that does not, you can't roll it over into, it's not as portable as some. They are just going to give you a check, which can really mess with your taxes that year. So as a fellow, I don't think you're eligible for it. It's usually just for the highly compensated physicians, but there is a little caveat in there that I think might include fellows when I was looking through our benefits. As a fellow, I would probably not do the 457 because you don't know where you're going to be long term yet. But just know that it is non-governmental as well in case you stay on with us. Then this is the time to contribute to your Roth. And that's just my extra tax savings there while you're in training, despite it being post-tax money. So what that means, and you'll also see Roth in full caps. It's a senator's name. It is not an acronym. There was a Senator Roth who started this. It is post-tax money, meaning that you have already paid taxes on that money. You are investing it. Then it grows, and you are not taxed on either the initial investment because you've already paid those taxes. You're not taxed on the growth when you withdraw it. So you get that money as it is when you retire. That's great. If you're in a very low tax bracket right now, you will likely be in a higher tax bracket in retirement. It is also kind of a way to hedge your bets because we really don't know what taxes are going to do. So if you learn one thing from me, let it be this. You have saved up enough that you're not living paycheck to paycheck. You have contributed up to the match because that is free money that Children's is willing to give you in addition to your salary. Then you have $100 left after that. That's it. Whatever. Maybe you have up to $7,000 and you're going to do it the full cap. Great. While you are able, if you are able, everyone's situation is different, contribute to a Roth IRA directly while you're in training. The single income cap is $150. The household cap is $236 to contribute $1,000. I left off the K on that. It's not $236 to contribute directly. If you are above that, you can backdoor it, but I'm going to assume that you're not. So then you can contribute directly to it. It is tax deductible beyond certain income amounts. So you are you're contributing now post-tax money, but you get to deduct that from your income on taxes without taxes on the growth. If you contribute $100 now, that will be over $700 in retirement, and you're not paying taxes on that $600 difference. So you are not taxed on the growth. That is a huge advantage when you are young and in a low tax bracket. Seize this opportunity. It will not come again, most likely in most physician careers. It might, but that's usually not a good sign. So seize that opportunity now. If you live one thing from me, do your Roth IRA. You can do it up to tax day. So you have until April 2026 to save money to contribute to a Roth IRA for 2025. Then the clock resets and you can start again in 2026. You can contribute January 2026 if you want for your 2026 one. The second year fellows, you can contribute in 2025. You might be able to in 2026, depending on when you start your attending job. So keep that in the back of your mind too as an option. And then something to work on with your taxes. You can contribute up to April 2027 for next year's 2026 Roth IRA. This I'm going to kind of gloss over because a lot of this is not going to apply to your age group now, but I want you to know it exists. If you have a car, you should have car insurance. If you rent or have a house, you should have those insurances now. Disability insurance is best bought into early. So if your life circumstances are such that you will have anyone who depends on you or yourself who is not independently wealthy and needs income, like the majority of people, look at disability insurance. It is something that is cheapest now in training. You want own occupational riders so that you are tied to being an allergist, so that they can't say, well, you could be, I don't know, something else. And so it's not as specific there. You want your specialty certification, your specialty disability insurance. Umbrella, again, the finance people say early. I don't know that anyone's targeting fellows as much for liability type situations, but being a physician is a little bit of a target on your back. You get in a car accident, something like that, you do want umbrella insurance at some point. The benefit of umbrella insurance is it's cheap. So we pay we pay $200 for a $5 million umbrella policy. Term life is something, if you have kids that rely on you, if you have a spouse that relies on you, you need life insurance of some sort to allow them to continue to live if they depend on you. Now, your educational debt is usually forgiven on death. So you do not have to have life insurance to cover your med school debt. That will be forgiven once you kick the bucket. Estate planning, if you have kids, then earlier the better. This is a little bit of, I'm behind on that, so I definitely need to do that. This is a good reminder for anyone who has kids that probate sucks all of the money out of your estate. So if you can avoid probate with naming beneficiaries on your retirement accounts, with a living will, and bonus for all of us in medicine, we've seen all the bad things, you can put your healthcare wishes in there. If you have kids, we've talked a little bit about the 529. There is a new rule that you can roll over $35,000 remaining of a 529 to an IRA one time. And the account needs to be open for 15 years. So the 529s have some benefit in Kansas. Caution against overfunding them because that money is for education. If you withdraw it for other things, like say your kid wants, I don't know, they want to go parachuting or something and they want to take that money out for that, you will pay penalties on it. You can change the beneficiary though. So say, Caroline really likes to eat Play-Doh. Maybe she's not going to wind up in college. I can change the beneficiary of her account to fund one of my other kids or to fund her kids or to fund a niece. You can change that beneficiary. It is a way that high earners can leave a generational trust fund of sorts solely for education as well. The flip side of that, if you still want to save for college, is a UTMA, which is a Uniform Trust to Minors Act. It's just a name for a brokerage account held for a kid under 18. So you're just investing for them in your brokerage account. Two big downsides to this. One is the kiddie tax. Any unearned income over $2,700 in a year, your kid pays taxes on at your tax bracket. So say you have enough in your kid's account to pay for college, they will be paying higher taxes on those earnings in the UTMA than they would in a 529. The other big disadvantage, it becomes your kids at 18 in most states, 21 in some. That means that your 18-year-old son gets to choose what he wants to do with that money. Or, daughter. I just always, like, if any of my kids are going to choose something, it's going to be Luke. So they have control over it. A 529, I have control over it. These are things to think about. What amounts you want where. Once you get through all of these things, then there is non-tax advantaged investing. That is just generic brokerage account. We have filled up all of the other buckets. Now we're putting still more money aside because we want to have a sweet retirement. Okay, this is all of the big investing financial literacy stuff. Now, student loans, yay, they're super fun. So it's getting worse. Every year it's getting worse. And they used to graduate, and I'm not quite that old, 1999, with $122,000. Mean educational debt in 2020, which is the latest statistics that was really, really well documented, is $200,000 to $260,000, with DOs slightly being higher. And that is the mean. So that means half have more. And it's not uncommon to hear $300,000-$400,000, especially factoring in undergrad. So there's lots of governmental programs. I'm really not going to say much about these in general because they are all changing, as we all see in the news right now. PSLF, a lot of academic institutions qualify for that. So that is definitely, that's the one I want to comment on. Keep that in the back of your mind before you refinance for any of them. Because if you're PSLF eligible based on wherever you go to be an attending, that, as of right now, is the best option. But again, we don't know what that's going to look like. These are how they base all of this. These are the calculations they do. The first is the income driven. Payments have nothing to do with the interest rate. They have nothing to do with how much debt you have. It's just based on your income. So that's income-based repayment. And it's taxable forgiveness after 25 years, and they count to PSLF. So this is what the majority of people are doing until they know if they're eligible for PSLF or not. Pay is the pay as you earn. This is actually what it's called nowadays, and it's going to be for most of us, for most of you guys, after 2011. Repay is new, and it is 10% of discretionary income without a maximum. So say you go on to, somewhere where you're making an absolute fortune, there is no max on what the repay may pull out as your payment. And once you're after residency, after fellowship, then it's going to increase. This also counts for PSLF. PSLF is the public service loan forgiveness. It is in the news right now. We do not know what it's going to happen. I have friends who have recently, some of us snuck in under the wire and got it done. I have friends who have gotten you've done your 120 payments and we'll see what happens type thing. So it is, most residencies, most fellowships count, most academic positions count. There are people like Nick at St. Luke's is working at a nonprofit hospital, but in a private group. So he does not count, whereas the VA does. So it really just depends on where you go. It works great if you qualify. And this last point here is kind of important. I would be saving on the outside if you go this plan because of legislative risk. Nobody knows what this program is going to look like. Then the other option is you graduate and maybe you go into private practice and you're not eligible for PSLF. You refinance. And these typical rates are totally made up based on what I could find. This will change. There is a rumor that interest rates are going to decrease markedly this fall. Okay, great. We don't know. We have no idea what that's going to be like. You can refinance to a consolidated loan and pay them as aggressively as you can. So you have to qualify. Not all doctors are going to be offered the same rates. It depends on your debt levels. If you have a lot of personal credit card debt or something, then you may get a worse rate. It was not possible in that window post 2008 with all of the financial upheaval, but it started again in 2013. So you want to wait until you have a contract to decide to refinance, because if you refinance, you are no longer eligible for PSLF. So lots of companies do this. Sophie gives you a free t-shirt. That's all I know. Then this, do not refinance. The main point on this is do not refinance until you're sure about PSLF. So don't refinance until you have a signed contract in your hand about what you're going to do when you grow up. Disability insurance. Doctors get disabled. We are our own greatest asset. Everyone needs some sort of disability insurance. What that looks like for you is going to depend on your personal situation. Long-term disability insurance pays a monthly benefit if you become long-term disabled or permanently disabled. It is usually tax-free unless your employer has been paying with pre-tax dollars, which I'm 99% sure is our situation at Children's. We just had a benefit change with this though, and I couldn't get that answer exactly right for this. I think that our long-term disability that is offered through Children's would be pre-tax. I think we would be taxed on that income. You can generally insure up to 60 to 70% of your income. The thought being to not insure your entire income, because if you are permanently disabled, your spending habits will likely change in some form. Buy it now. It's cheapest if you buy it now. How much? Really hard to tell. And you can change it as you get older, as you get more established in your spending patterns, as you have permanent housing, things like that. Most policies only pay until the age when you would have retired. So fun fact, you still have to have retirement savings out of this, which I thought was a giant bummer when I figured that out. There are individual policies and they are portable. You can take it with you regardless of what your job. Most private practices will have this. There are group policies, which would be like what Children's offers us. It is very expensive. It is going to be several $100s a month for a $10,000 benefit. And you want to get an independent agent and have someone who is pretty knowledgeable with physician disability insurance to look for these and to look for these to quote multiple programs. If you are a dude, you can cancel unneeded riders like for pregnancy complications. Girls were more expensive because of those same things. And whenever you hit that point where you no longer need to work because you're financially independent, then cancel your policy. Term life insurance. This is the only one you're allowed to get. Do not get whole life insurance. So term is what you buy if someone depends on your income. If you have little people, if you have a spouse, then you want to insure yourself. It is a tax-free cash benefit upon your death. And it is pure life insurance, meaning that if you die during the term, it pays. This other little point, if you have a stay-at-home parent, then you may want to consider insuring them for the cost of what it would, like what you would need in case they died, childcare or something in the short term. I would say all of you coming out of this lecture are going to be educated enough to have a good enough emergency fund that you do not need to waste the expense there on disability insurance on term life insurance for the stay-at-home parent. So it is cheap. Term is cheap. It is, if you are healthy and young, it is peanuts a month. If you are a girl, bonus, it is cheaper for us. This is about the only thing that's cheaper for us, and that's because in general men make the dumb decisions that get them killed, I think is the thought on that. It's useful for income protection during your whole career. You do not want whole life. Whole life is much more expensive. It's designed to be sold, so it is being hawked to you by insurance agents. 75% of physicians in these finance blogs, so they're dorks, regret their decision. Whole life is harder to get out of. You want term life that ends and is a set amount. How much to buy? I don't know, how much do you need? Do you want to pay off house, pay off college? Does your spouse make more than you and you don't actually need this? Does your spouse not work and need this to live for the foreseeable nearest future? Add up your expenses, round up to the nearest million, and then buy your policy. Most are going to be like in that $2 to $5 million range. Seems like a lot of money. Try not to die. Oh, that's my kid. Oh, that was meant to be on the other one. This is the dangerous stuff we do, why we need insurance. But this is also the age you should be when you start thinking about Roth. So, retirement accounts are the best. The benefit of the Roth is so many-fold when you're able to do it. So, these are your retirement savings. This is what it looks like when you start young and when you have much, much higher Roth abilities and retirement savings and time in the growth. If this is after tax, then all of this downfall is much faster because it is not growing as fast. So this is the huge advantage of Roth when you're young. Roth is tax deferred, or I'm sorry, Roth is tax-free at withdrawal. So it is post-tax money. And the tax deferred means that you get to take that off your income off the top. So if you're not Roth eligible, you're only doing traditional, you get a tax break up to a certain level. Most of us are out of that anyways. It messes with your student loan payments as well. So if you're doing any of these programs, you need to look into this with someone who does this for a living. Then your main goal with any of these, traditional or Roth, is going to be to get your employer match. Okay, this is your waterfall. This picture, remember this? These are the main things that you're going to do. I have some arguments with it. Like, I think that your tiny emergency fund should predate your disability insurance and your life insurance if you don't have dependents. And then I do agree, though, match first and foremost in that retirement account. Then your Roth IRA. I would put a Roth IRA over the HSA, but this is the popular waterfall thing that you're going to see. So you make 200 grand, you put 20%. This is my thing from before. Now you see why it has such a higher return. The secret to physician wealth is you make a lot of money, you don't spend a lot of money. That's kind of the goal in there. Then this is the mantra, live like a resident. I disagree with this a little bit. You still have to live your life, but continue to live like a resident while in training, then live like a resident for a couple years after if you're able. You can carve out a massive chunk of your new attending salary before the lifestyle creep to pay off loans, save up down payment, max out the retirement accounts. And if you really knuckle down those first couple of years, you set yourself up for far better success down the road when you're old. This is doing the calculations of the average attending salary, a little high for some allergists, but then you're able to carve out $172,000 to build wealth, paving up loans, saving up for down payment. It is easier to do this when you are fresh out of fellowship and not used to an attending. It's much harder for someone who's 45 years old to go back and try to do this when you already have the mortgage and your kids in private school. So be smart coming out of the gates and your life will be easier. Have a written plan. That first year of your attending life is the most important year of your financial life. It's the crux of when you may still be eligible for some Roth things, but you finally have the income to fully fund them, and you're making the big life decisions. So living within your means, this is the easiest way to establish it. It is far easier to slowly grow into your attending salary than to cut back. And plan out what you're going to do with your attending paychecks before you ever get them. Have your written plan, know what you're going to do with them. Then, so what we learned, you now have a second job to learn all of this. The biggest point here is get in the habit of saving, Roth for in training, live like a resident so that you have those first couple of years really well established and that you have set yourself up for a good financial future.